Today, the independent party will no longer exist or be recognized in Louisiana. The new change could lead the way for more people to vote in primary elections in the Pelican State.
Closed primaries all but ensures that you'll have a Democrat and a Republican in the general election when everybody can vote.
As the Pelican State converts from an open party to a closed party primary election system, some voters may need to switch to a new party affiliation before it's time to vote. Starting August 1st, if you are registered as an independent voter, your party affiliation will change to no party in Louisiana's voter registration system.
So I think the chief difference with the move to closed primaries is that you'll no longer have everyone facing off, all parties in that primary, which conceivably could allow two Democrats or two Republicans emerge in a runoff.
State lawmakers mandated this change during the 2025 regular legislative session to transition the state to a closed party primary system. House Bill 420, which will go into effect on Friday, mandates that any person registered with the independent party will have their party affiliation entered as no party. Records from the Secretary of State show about 2.98 million people have registered to vote in Louisiana as of July 1st. And while a majority of voters are in either the Republican or Democratic Party, over 834,000 are listed with another party, with about 150,000 voters registered with the independent party. In moving to closed party primaries, KALB political analyst Greg LaRose says the legislature removed the opportunity for anyone with an independent party or others to take part in those closed primaries.
Now, with the independent party going away and those 150,000 voters officially being designated as no party, they can take part in a Democratic or Republican primary. Without the law that was changed earlier this year, they'd have been locked out of those closed primaries. Regardless of which way you fall on the spectrum, hopefully it motivates you to go out and take part if you're energized by a primary candidate who you feel should move on to the general runoff, that you get out there and vote and do it. The system now allows that. Keep in mind, though, like you aren't beholden to that candidate. Let's say you decide you want to back that Republican in the primary. You're not locked in as a Republican in the general election. You can switch and vote for the Democrat in the general election.
As closed party primaries get set to begin in 2026. And for registered voters who may have more questions on the change from an open party to a closed party primary system, head to govote.com. That's GEAUXvotes.com.